Thank you, Charlie. Okay, one more session today, and I'll say in my time at ANA, which is amazingly, it's been 19 years. It's almost impossible for me to think that, let alone say it. I think our next speaker, with all due respect to everybody else that's been up on the stage and will be up on the stage, he's the most thoughtful speaker that I've had the pleasure of hearing. I remember inviting him to an ANA one-day conference. I think it was hosted by Miller Coors. And knowing that he was in Chicago, we reached out and we were delighted that he accepted. This goes back maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And Rashad, I told you this on the phone. I still remember your topic then. It was about personal branding and thoughts to build personal brands. So that was something that came out of this man's mouth 12 years ago, and I still remember it. I think you are defined by your first name. People in the industry say Rashad, and we know it's Rashad Tabakawala, one of the few people in the industry where I think all you need to say is the first name. So it's a real honor, Rashad, please come up. It's a real honor to have you here with us this morning. Thank you so much.
In 1983, I was a media buyer at Leo Burnett as part of the client service training program. And I received my first evaluation. And it was about as stellar as you could get. Everything looked amazing. And I was asked to go see the media director. And I thought this was going to be a moment of, you are the most great thing that we've ever got. He asked me to close the door, and he said, I've looked at your evaluation. It's really good, but you will not succeed in advertising. He said, you're too Indian. And I said, what does that mean? He says, you have to be culturally relevant to the market and country that you are in. You speak about cricket, we play baseball. You are uncomfortable without notes. You've not been to undergraduate school, and therefore you know nothing about what it is. I can see both your clients and your colleagues not exactly certain. So I'm sitting there crestfallen, and then he says, but I think I know how to fix it. Can you help me fix it? Can I help you fix it? So I said, yes. So he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to evaluate you on papers you write about baseball games and football games, and I'm going to send you to them. My kids are going to take you to the University of Wisconsin and University of Michigan, and I'm going to get you into a club where almost everybody are white males. That was 37 years ago. I'm still in the business. But what was so very important then was a first learning I had, which is the future is real, and you have to adapt to the future. The future does not adapt to you. And true leadership is looking and telling the truth and then helping fix it. If that person had not done that for me, I would not be here. And today, again and again when I tell this story, people said, I wish people would tell me, but they don't anymore because everyone is worried about being sued. But the future is something we have to adapt to and not something that adapts to us. Lesson number one. Now it's 1984. I've got promoted. I'm working on a secret project. I'm working on a toothpaste called Gleam, which is now dead. But Gleam used to be the #1 toothpaste in America. It had a 40 share. When I was working on it that day, it had a 2 share. And the reason for that was because there was this crazy little thing called Crest that came out from the very same company. And it had a technology breakthrough called sodium fluoride. And because of sodium fluoride, Gleam went from 40 to 2, and Crest was 37 share points. But the front project I had was Gleam. The real project I was working on was the next breakthrough from Procter & Gamble, which was a technology or an ingredient called sodium pyrophosphate, which helped plaque and helped tartar removal. And I was working on launching what was going to be called Professional Care Paste. When I was looking at the numbers, and part of what I was doing is I was doing reports on Gleam, I began to notice something very strange in the other. So there was Colgate, Procter & Gamble, Smith Beecham Climb, and then there was this thing called other. And other share went from 7 to 9 to 11 to 13. And I said, I wonder what's going on here. So I pointed it to everybody. There's this thing called other. They said, don't worry about it. That's irrelevant. Other eventually turned out to be 18 share points, all of which almost came from Crest. And the reason no one paid attention to other is it wasn't about teeth brightening, it wasn't about sodium fluoride, and it did not come from a company anyone knew of. The breakthrough was a pump, toothpaste in a pump. The company came out from Minnesota. It was Minnetonka, which made soft soap. As a result of that, Crest canceled Professional Care Pace, or P&G did, took the technology, put it into Crest because they could not afford to lose market share. I had a second learning. The future does not come from the heavens, it comes from the slime. So I had two learnings now. The future does not bend to you, you must bend to the future. The second is the future comes from the slime, it does not come from the heavens. Learning number 3, 1995. 1995, I launched the Leo Burnett Interactive Marketing Group. And I began to realize that what I really need are people who know how to do things on macro media. It was macro media, flash, and stuff like that. And that this wasn't really television, it was different. But I couldn't get any of my creative directors, and I also could figure out that what I really needed to do was get this stuff produced. I could write the strategy, I could talk about how cool it was, but I needed some people to work on CD-ROMs and work on other kinds of things. But I couldn't attract that talent. I was within a structure. So I went to our leadership, and I said something which is considered, for those who know Leo Burnett, travesty. I said, it's time to take the name off the door. When you join Leo Burnett, they run a founder's video that talks about how you should never take the name off the door. And I basically said, this is not helping me. Drop the name. I need a completely new operating system. I need to leave the building. I need to hire completely new people. Otherwise, we will not be able to compete with Digitas. We will not be able to compete with Avenue A. We will not be able to compete with Organic. And we took the name off the door. And we launched a completely new company with completely new talent. And I learned the future does not fit in the containers of the past. So those were my 3 learnings. We have to accept and bend to reality in the future. The future comes from the slime, and the future does not fit in the containers of the past. So now let's apply it to today. I sat all through yesterday and I listened to amazing talks from amazing people. But 3 realities were never addressed. And so I shall put these realities on the table. The first one is we, as an industry, are weaponizing society. What was an advertising operating system has become a society operating system. What works for targeted advertising works for polarizing this country and other countries. We are so careful about making sure that we are brand safe. What about being society safe? We are funding this. We should have some impact on how our money goes. Not me, our clients. And so to a great extent, why aren't we talking about that? It's our money. Why do we take orders from people? That's one key question I have. The second question is diversity. Diversity is extremely important, and we're doing amazing things as a group of people, whether it's the 4As, the ANA, the IAB, and everything we're doing makes a lot of sense. But there are two things that we should be thinking about which we may not be doing. The first one is, do we really have diversity of thinking? Or do we just have diversity? Are we creating cultures where people can speak up and question and not think that they lose their job, someone will say that they don't know what they're talking about, that we can't engage, and that the only way we can communicate is everybody goes into rooms and calls names to each other, which, by the way, is what's going on in society. And so, to a great extent, diversity of people is not the same as diversity of thinking, which is number one. The second one is we can't be what the other person can be or be like. So, for instance, I'm a man. It's hard for me to be a woman. I know it's possible, but it's hard. Okay? I'm an Indian. It's hard for me to be an American or a German. However, there is one group of people that we don't talk enough about that all of us are going to become older. Where are all the old people? That's an interesting question. When 10,000 people turn 65 every day, and more than 50% of our wealth is held by over 60-year-old, where are they? Interesting question. I kind of ask because I've become one of those crazy older people. And apparently older people have a problem learning new things, I've been told. When I launched the Interactive Marketing Group, I was 40 years old. When social media came around and I learned it, I was 53. It's absolute bullshit. And we have to, as a group, recognize that if we cannot make every part of our industry safe for what we're going to grow up to be, this will be a big issue. So those are two forms of diversity. Diversity of thinking and diversity of age. So that's the second one. So that's the first thing we should be facing. Another thing that we should be facing, besides polarization and diversity, is our quest and love for data. What the shit? Tell me one goddamn company in the world that differentiates itself on data outside of the 5 most valuable companies because they happen to, at the current time, illegally own a lot of data. Okay? Tell me one. When someone tells me faster, cheaper, better, you know what happens? Every single financial firm has gone to 0 commissions. That's what happens. We choose with our hearts and we use numbers to justify what we just did. Brands are about trust and brands are about emotion, and everything is about data. And what's particularly interesting is I have no clue what most people are even saying. If you actually listen to the words, I'm confused. Data lake, data this thing, this, API this, API that. Now, I'm a dumbass. I just happen to have an advanced degree in mathematics. I understand databases. But what the shit? I see clients all blurry-eyed. Come on, people, stand up. The future is about data-driven storytelling. It isn't about data. Nobody can differentiate on data. Data is not the goddamn new oil. Refining the data is the new oil. But we don't actually think about that way. And so my old stuff is like, why aren't we talking about the fact that every data-driven company goes to 0? It's never sufficient. And so those are simple things I ask. Where's the diversity really? Why are we becoming so fixated on data? Why aren't we talking about the fact that we are actually funding this? And young people are asking, who is funding this? So simple questions. That's what I call about we have to think about the future and bend to reality. The second is the future comes from the slime. And a big part of it is one of the things that I happen to have the opportunity to do is have perspective. That's what happens when you get old. 25 years ago, we started the first connected age with the World Wide Web, a company that optimized search. So you were connecting to find things, connected to information. Google, connecting for transaction. Amazon, two most valuable companies. 2007, second connected age. Connected all the time, mobile phone. Apple, connected to everybody else, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Second connected age. As a part of the second connected age, the really new things happened, including companies like Uber, Airbnb, Dollar Shave Club. None of those could have been born without the second connected age. We are now about to enter the third connected age, and we aren't paying attention because we are still fixated on data, 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 and all these silly things of the second connected age. The third connected age is where data connects it to data, which is the best way of thinking about machine learning. Things connecting to things, which is the Internet of Things. New ways of connecting, of which voice is the first one. Maybe there'll be AR and VR. And much faster ways of connecting, which are 5G. And all of these are blended together. So a Echo or a Google Home is an Internet of Things using machine learning, using voice as an interface, which will become particularly interesting in the world of 5G. If Adam Neumann had not destroyed WeWork, I will tell you a technology that is going to destroy WeWork. It's called 5G. When you have 5G, you can sit in a goddamn garden and you can have beer from a proper pub, right? And so the whole idea is this entire thing, the vision fund is a delusion fund. The whole idea is if you see the new technology coming and not prepared for it, what are we going to do? So pay attention to something besides Facebook and Google and Amazon and all these other places, because something's coming. That's the future will come from the slime, never come from the heavens. The third is the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. Everything I was taught about brand building is not true anymore. I was taught that we should focus on consumers, and that is complete bullshit. Because I'll tell you why. When you focus on a consumer, you look at a company or you look at a person through the lens of your brand. I don't define myself through a lens of a brand. Only brand managers do. Even if you are a fantastic world-class company like P&G, if you look at all of their brands, what do? They remove dirt. They're a dirt removal company. Do I define myself through dirt removal? Probably not. Think about me as a person. Think about me as a human. Think about me as a citizen. Stop thinking about me as a consumer. Because when you think about me as a consumer, you really don't understand me. You're looking at me through a lens of a brand. Second is we talked about the importance of scale. Scale of manufacturing, scale of spending, scale of distribution. Interesting, but there are new scales. The scale of data, the scale of network, the scale of influence. If scale was so important, how come that the fastest growing cosmetic brand by Kylie Jenner has the following statistics? $900 million of sales in 18 months. Total number of employees less than 55. All of its fulfillment done by all of its production done by Pure Beauty. All of its fulfillment done by Shopify. Total media, 120 million Instagram accounts, which are hers. Come on. And we keep saying scale, scale, scale. Who the hell cares, right? Dollar Shave Club reduced the value of Gillette without scale. All these DTC brands are doing it in an interesting way. I'd like to put a hypothesis that no brand has been built in America using television after the second age started, second connected age. It's scaled using television, but it came through a combination of sampling, interesting word of mouth, interesting other kinds of stuff. And we should be paying attention to this. So that's about the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. So you can see how these things are very intriguing. So now what should we do about it? And I think it's very, very important to do something about it. So here are the following things about let's face reality. This subsegment is about growth, and we want to talk about growth. I do not believe a company can grow unless its people grow. Over and out. No one is talking about the fact that we are not attracting talent into this industry, training people in a world-class way. We are actually making people flee. When marketing is more important than ever, because we have these empowered people, we are basically making this an industry that is having a really hard time attracting talent. And I'm not talking about like the silly advertising people that I'm part of. I'm talking about the whole thing. The whole thing. Here's an industry that is basically not even trusting itself anymore when it's supposed to be putting out brand trust marks. That's a big question. We should be attracting talent. We should be thinking how great this industry is versus everybody basically saying, how do we cut costs? Let me tell you something. I care a lot for my clients, but I care for my kids much more. And if I have to make a choice, everybody will run out of this goddamn industry. And we have to be aware of that unless you grow as people, unless we connect, and unless we have a purpose and value, we are going to have a talent crisis on our hands that is amazing. And for every one person, by the way, the agency people lose to Facebook and Google, clients lose 3. I've measured it. Okay, so just let's make sure we know what we're doing. Second, the future doesn't fit in the containers of the past. And in this future, it doesn't fit in the containers of the past. I think what's extremely, extremely important for all of us to basically sort of think about is truly what are the new ways we should be thinking about it. So everything I hear about is the container of the past moved to a different place. In-housing is an agency in a different place. It's not a new container. We just moved a container from one caboose to another caboose, right? Where are the new models? That's an interesting concept. And the last one is the future comes from the slime. And the future comes from the slime is the one thing that I basically learned is I'm absolutely 37 years into the business, I have no idea what the hell's going on. Okay, because it's so difficult, it's very interesting. But on the other hand, therefore, what it teaches you is if you want to predict anything about the future, you have to be humble because you are going to be proved wrong. And therefore, we need a sense of sort of humility. And I often see, the more I see people who talk to me about how powerful they are and how much control they have, the more I basically see losers. Okay, real losers, and we don't work with losers. Because if you're really good, you're approachable, you talk to everybody, you help people. You don't like basically say, I'm so cool for school. And we have to be very humble. So I will basically end with another story, and then 3 key points from there. There was a man, he still lives, but he no longer works these days, who controlled 40% of Publicis' revenue, 60% of Publicis' profits, and 75% of Publicis' growth. And one day, I had to go for a new business pitch, and I was at my daughter's graduation from middle school, and the planes got canceled, and I had to find myself catching a train to Urbana, Champaign in the middle of the night so we could catch a plane from there to go to a client pitch. In that particular year, there was nothing like Uber. The phones were Nokia phones. And in the middle of the night, at midnight, I arrived late in this train station in Urbana, Champaign. And I'm thinking, like, how the hell do I go to a hotel? Where the hell am I? What's going on? And this is like a scene out of Casablanca. The last scene, there's fog, literally. There's a light. And in a trench coat, standing under the light, is this gentleman who basically says, I realized someone would have to drive you to the hotel. That was Jack Clews. That was class. That's what we need in our industry. That, by the way, is one of the reasons why no one could ever recruit me, not that anybody can recruit me because nobody wants me, is because, to a great extent, relationships, people, and emotion drive this business, not the other sordid stuff that we constantly talk about. So with that being said, I have 3 pieces of advice, as I always do. First piece of advice, please invest at least 1 hour a day learning new things. I have in so many meetings where nobody actually knows what they're talking about. And if I remove the buzzword bingo, I don't know what the hell's going on. You should put down every buzzword that you hear and then ask people, what does it actually mean? So that's number one. Number two is today, especially in the environment that we are living in, please build a case for the exact opposite of what you believe, and please try to understand why that's true. Because if we cannot engage with other people, we have a real big issue. And everyone only talks about what they believe. I spend a lot of time building a case on what the opposite of what I believe. I have a very, very strong case as to why Trump is the greatest American president. And the third is, remember this. This industry is a remarkable industry. This industry has basically created amazing value and wealth and has changed society. We are, however, in a transformation and we are in a transition. We are in the process of going from being a caterpillar to a butterfly. And in that middle process, it's very, very ugly. But let's not forget, we are going to be a butterfly. Thank you very much.
I told you. Thank you, Rashad. Thoughtful as ever. Thank you. Let's talk about diversity. I thought it was interesting that you talked about ageism, and there's, unfortunately, a very public case in our industry right now where someone is suing his former agency. I always thought, people at an older age, many are making more money, so let's get rid of this guy or gal and hire somebody else cheaper. Your agency management, so why does that happen? So why aren't there more people like us in the industry? I remember at a job I had maybe 20 years ago, a friend came to visit me and said, Bill, how come there's nobody, I don't see anybody over 40? I didn't think about it at the time, but now you walk into an agency and that's rare. So what should we do?
I think the stuff is we should just make sure that we know that we all are going to get old and behave that way. That's simple, right? And the other one is to actually think of the fact that does experience matter or does it not matter? And can you unlearn or can you not learn? And I believe experience matters. I believe a good archer, you have to give a good archer just one bow and one arrow. Bad archers, break the bow, 20 arrows, right? And I've always basically believed we have this fixation about cheap. One of the key things I will tell you is the ability to advertise is going to decline by 30% over the next 5 years, at least, because of what's happening. And I will tell you, with all these $5.99, $4.99 Apple versus Amazon, the ability to basically reach people with commercially underwritten content is going to fall so quickly that you're going to actually have to pay more. And we are actually not paying enough people, because if you actually look at all the money we spend in advertising, with all the time that people spend, it's $3.75 an hour, which is half minimum wage. When we say we respect people's time, we are not respecting people's time. We're wasting people's time. And more people spend time far away from ad-supported medium, it's going to be very hard for them to come back. And when they come back, if they see clutter, they're going to hate you. And those are things we should be thinking about, because that's really what's happening. Fundamentally, these streaming wars are going to have a major impact, and no one is talking about it, because $5.99, $4.99, people are going to be thing. And then people say, well, nobody can afford that. Well, if people can't afford $5.99 and $4.99, they cannot afford to buy a car. They cannot afford to buy a computer. And Scott Galloway, as he says, advertising is a price that poor people have to pay.
So I want to poke at you again about diversity from another angle. So clearly in this industry, there's been a lot of conversation about gender diversity at the more senior level. And according to A&A research, at the most senior level, CMO or head of marketing, it's about 45% women, 55% men. Not even yet, but I would argue that over time that number has gone up, so I think that's in a pretty good place. Ethnic diversity is poor. You could look around the room here. And there's been a lot of conversation in the industry about that. Where there hasn't been conversation is young men entering the industry, in my viewpoint. Right now, according to research that we've done, about 65% of the people in marketing departments at A&A member companies are women. So that means 35% are men. And we see at the more junior level, the skew is heavily women. So I'm curious, is that something that you see at Publicis? And, I believe that will be an issue at some point.
I don't know what the statistics for Publicis are, but I would basically say that there's clearly an underrepresentation of Hispanic, African American, et cetera.
No doubt.
And one of the reasons primarily is because everyone has to adjust. We have to learn their cultures, they have to learn other cultures. What I was told, and I was taught by my boss, allowed me to succeed.
Yeah.
But we have to basically have the ability to have conversations and show what success looks like, and have these really tough, interesting people conversations, which we don't. My basic belief simply is having a face is not the same as having a voice. I need the voice of these people. I don't need the face of these people.
There's diversity and inclusion. Inclusion is the voice.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Do you have a perspective on the gender balance?
I don't. I would just say that there is one thing I worry about, and what I do worry about is this. Some of the most important industries in the world, nursing, education, are some of the most important ones in the world who have tilted to being 80%, 85% women.
Sure.
Here's the issue. They're very poorly paid professions. Okay? So my tilting is it the chicken or the egg? Right? Is it that the people are not coming into the industry because they do not see a future? We have not built a case as to why this is good for their careers or for their growth. So, and therefore they see this is not a place where they can build careers, or is it something else? I'm not sure.
Yeah, interesting. Again, I'd love to invite you guys to come up to the microphones. And here, thank you.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I really liked what you said about world-class talent and having world-class training, and I would just love if you could describe a little bit more about what do you think world-class training looks like?
World-class training requires three forms. The first is, as bosses, as leaders, all of us have to basically have the ability to spend time training people. I believe that leaders work on strategy, culture, and talent. Leave the rest to more talented people. So that's number one. Number two, we have to invest in training with time and money. One of the big downsides, I will tell you, about the way we used to invest in training in my own company 20 years ago and now is shocking. And I see this also in our client companies, because what we've done is we've removed anything that builds people. So we have to invest in training, which is education, giving time for people to go, etc. The third is we need to encourage people to try new things, and when it doesn't work, truly help them figure out why it didn't work, versus just saying failure is good and then actually punishing them. The most important thing I look at is I want to understand a company's incentive systems. I don't want to understand their press releases, their formats, their websites where fantasies happen, right? I want to ask a very simple thing. Who do you pay? Who has the power in your company? And if you basically can pay and have power for people who train people, then I believe you.
Thank you.
Great. I'd like to ask you a question about media unbundling. So, once upon a time, the ad agency did everything, So, creative and media together, and then for business reasons, agency holding companies said, let's unbundle media and put it here. And then I remember, you mentioned, I think you said Publicis Interactive or digital. I remember being at Gray Advertising, and then digital unbundled. So they started Gray Interactive that wasn't even in the same office as Gray Advertising. It wasn't on 3rd Avenue and 48th Street. It was in Silicon Alley in Manhattan. So, one argument is that agencies did themselves a disservice by fragmenting themselves, where you used to have, one powerful agency. It's been split up into little pieces. Curious if you have a perspective on that, and if we could have a do-over, do you think agencies might have done things differently?
I think agencies did the right thing for their time, because what happens is times change. We don't freeze certain things. We did things, the unbundling of media, which I was sort of involved in, is because that's what clients were looking for at that particular time. There were these, it wasn't Google and all, but there was Time Warner, there were all these other companies, and one had to basically do that. As importantly, the new technologies required major investments. The media companies were making the margin, but the investment was not going into the talent and people, and so you had to basically do that. Initially, the digital thing was necessary because of the new skill sets, the new compensation systems, because you could not live on 2% commission in those days on that. Now, and the other thing to recognize is agencies follow clients. Clients don't follow agencies. So we actually look for what our clients' needs are, or we anticipate the needs. Now, almost everybody is coming to put it together again, but they're putting together in a very different way. So the big difference is how it's coming together, and every group has its own name. We call it Power of One. But what basically happens is you need world-class talent working together against a common goal versus a whole bunch of mediocre talent singing songs together, right? And here's my basic belief. We are underappreciating how much core world-class talent is going to be, because we're moving into a world where unless you're really good at something, working with other people who are really good at it, it's like going to a Baskin-Robbins store and asking for all 32 flavors on one thing, right? Which is this whole idea of everything's got to be the same, makes no sense in the world. Do you actually believe in a world that we are living in fragmented, right, that we shouldn't have world-class people working together? So I think the issue is not on integration is something different. The issue on integration is incentive systems. How do you incentivize people to work together, both at the client level and our level, and how do you actually have world-class skills? Because if you're really, really good, people will hire you, and if you're not, you won't. And the better you are, the more you're likely to work with other good people. So I study a lot the movie industry because my daughter works there. They don't have like a director pretending to be a casting director, pretending to be a key grip, pretending to be something else. They all come together, work together for the movie. That's what the new model is going to look like.
Great. If you could introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ted Wright. You wrote a book. It's coming out in January. Why did you write it, and why should we read it?
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
Is he on your team?
He's not on my team. The reason, the name of the book is Restoring the Soul of Business, Staying Human in an Age of Data. Okay. I wrote the book primarily because I thought that we had stopped learning how to think, feel, and see the right way. And so the way my book begins on why this book, these are the first 5 lines. Time is the only thing we have. So why should you spend any time with this book? Because I hope to make a case to help you think, feel, and see differently about how you can build yourself, your team, and your company. And one of the biggest things that I've also basically found is almost everything over the years that I was telling people, they said, write it down. This is opposite. And people who worked for me, basically who have read the book, said, we hate you. You gave away everything in a particular book. What's particularly interesting is this book is not about advertising or marketing. So Ken Auletta, who wrote my foreword, basically calls it a business book and a book of wisdom. And it's basically all the things that you can do, and you can read any chapter in any order. But it's basically, it's everything I know and I've seen in business and I've studied for 2-3 years in the book. But it's a way to hopefully help everybody upgrade their mental and emotional operating systems.
Yeah, we look forward to that. Let's take quickly 2 questions. Sure. We'll take the top one. Can you give us an example of a company that is being successful at applying your principles?
I think there are many companies that are successful at applying the principles. I think for those of you who were here yesterday, if you saw the Chipotle case study, that's a company that is applying the principles, especially in its new form. Okay. And there are many, many companies, because I truly believe that this industry has better talent, better potential even today than ever before, but we need to basically kick ass and ask real questions and attract more talent in here.
Okay, and one more. So this is an opinion. Business schools aren't generating marketers anymore. So where would you, whether you agree with that opinion or not, where would you counsel employers to go to find great talent?
Talent doesn't have to necessarily come from business school. It can come from anywhere. I think the modern future talent is going to come from a liberal arts degree and someone who also is interested in sort of mathematics, because as the machines become more powerful, what we add to the machines, not work across the machines, becomes important. But one of the reasons why business schools are not creating marketers is because we, on both the client and agency side, are not building a reason for people to come and join us. We are describing this industry as an interscene industry where everybody is basically questioning each other, everyone talking about faster, slower, or faster, cheaper, better shit, right? Who the hell wants to work in an industry like that? We need to basically do a public service announcement for marketing.
Awesome. So final question for you. Let's go into the Rashad crystal ball. So, and you've given us a lot to think about already, but what's on your radar screen now of, something emerging that a year from now we'll say, holy cow, Rashad told us that at the ANA conference?
So I think one of which I've already mentioned, which is we're moving into this third connected age, and I write a lot about it, and you can also see it in the book. But the other thing that I would basically say is this. People are going to recognize that what differentiates companies and what will differentiate you is your carbon-based, analog, feeling part. Don't tilt too much, and we will begin to see successful companies are recognizing that versus the digital, data-driven, whatever part. And I'll give you an example how it's so true. 2 weeks ago, I was asked to speak to 700 of the senior-most Google people in sales and marketing across the Americas. I was the only outside speaker, and this is the only thing they wanted to talk about. It was a 45-minute conversation about my book, which I sent to some of their senior management. And you know what they were? This is, remember, the data-driven company, and this is true data. They've got amazing data. Is in that company, people are actually, amazing people are worried about what people are thinking about them. They're worried about how they can make a difference when there are only machines around them. And that is the future, which is what we can do with the machine, not what we can do against the machine.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right, guys. Almost at the coffee break. Just a couple of quick announcements before that. We'll be back here in this room. It's a longer break at 11 o'clock because next door at 10:35 we'll be announcing the winners of the ANA Genius Awards. So that gives you the opportunity, if you'd like, to go there for the Genius Awards and then come back here for the second stage. So this afternoon, or this feels like afternoon to me. So later this morning, we'll have Joe Jaffe, a real, what I would call agent of change. Everyone coming back here will get a copy of Joe's new book called Built to Suck. We will have Cheryl Ford, who is a futurist, Cheryl Connolly, who is the futurist at the Ford Motor Company, and Leland Mashmeyer, who is the head of the Chobani in-house agency. So before going on the coffee break, I want to thank Cadent for sponsoring that, and there's a quick video from Cadent. Enjoy the break.